Hi, I'm Maher Diab, Senior Software Engineer from the Power BI team. Today, we will be talking about integrating Power BI deployment pipelines into your Azure DevOps pipelines. We will start with a quick introduction to Power BI deployment pipelines, what it is, and how can it benefit you. Then we will have a quick overview of the Power BI Azure DevOps extension. And then most of the time, we will have a hands-on demo showing how to integrate Power BI deployment pipelines into your Azure pipelines. Power BI deployment pipelines is an easy-to-use release tool that enable BI creators to have a better release process in Power BI. Using this tool, BI creators can enjoy better productivity, faster release cycles, and less errors in production. While it's very easy to use the UI tool, Power BI deployment pipelines is backed by a powerful set of REST APIs to allow automation of the release process for developers. If you want to automate release to production in Power BI, using deployment pipelines can make it much easier for you. A single deploy operation can promote either a single or multiple items to production. Today, we support reports, datasets, dashboards, data flows, paginated reports, and now also data marts. We keep the connections between items for you. How you set it in development, it's how it will work in production. No need for you to try and reconfigure it after each deployment. Rules. Using rules, you can make that production stage will be always connected to production data and prevent any data leakage between stages. And soon, within a few months, we will have deployment history, which will allow you to keep track of items you have changed and also add notes to each deployment. This is the Power BI automation tools and Azure DevOps extensions that allow you to automate Power BI operations using your Azure pipelines. It's available publicly on the Visual Studio Marketplace. This extension is an open source available on GitHub. You can find the link for that on the Marketplace page or at the end of this presentation. You can install it easily by clicking on the Get It Free button on the screen. And then you just need to select your Azure DevOps organization and click Install. It will take just a moment, and then you will be able to use it in your Azure pipelines. In adding a new task, you can search for Power BI, and then you can see the full list of operations we support today. It allows you to manage your pipelines from scratch. For example, you can create a pipeline, assign a workspace to it, and deploy content. You can also grant access to users to your pipelines and workspaces. Now, before we begin with the demos, I just want to share with you what I have prepared before. So I have created a service principal and registered it in Power BI. I have prepared a workspace with some content, added the service principal to the workspace, and already installed the extension to my Azure DevOps organization. Now, let's consider the following scenario. In your organization, only certain people are allowed to create workspaces or assign it to a capacity. Or maybe you have many existing workspaces that you want to onboard into a pipeline. So now we will see how we can automate this scenario of taking an existing workspace, assigning to a pipeline, and deploying it through all the stages. Now I have switched to my Azure DevOps. I have opened the pipelines, and now I'm creating a new release on Azure DevOps. So let's click on New Release Pipeline. Let's go ahead and automate the scenario that we just talked about. We will start with an empty job. Let's give our release a name. Now, our first stage of the release will be creating the pipeline, assigning the workspace to it, and granting access to the user who is performing the operation. So let's name it create pipeline. And now we want to go to the tasks of this stage and start adding tasks. So click on add, search for Power BI, and first step will be create a new deployment pipeline. We go to the task. The first input to the task is the Power BI service connection. I have already created a Power BI Service Principal connection, and I will be using it. If you need to create one, you just need to click on the new button here. Then you will get this dialog where you can choose between Service Principal or username and password credentials. Then you will need to fill all the information below. As you can see, you need to provide Service Principal ID, its key, the tenant ID, and a friendly name for you to use later, and hit save. Now, we need to provide a display name for our pipeline. For that, we will be using variables in order to make this automation reusable. So let's add a few variables here. So I have created 3 variables. Pipeline name is the name of the newly created pipeline. User email is the user who is asking for this operation that will be granted permissions to all workspaces and pipeline, and the workspace name that I need to assign to the pipeline and deploy through it. Let's go back to our task. In order to use the variables, I will be using this syntax. We will leave the description empty for now. The second task will be assigning the workspace to the pipeline in a very similar way. We'll choose the production target stage and provide the workspace name from the variables. Both pipeline and workspace can be entered either by name or ID. And then we need to add the user to the just newly created pipeline. So this is our first stage. We have created a pipeline, assigning the workspace to the pipeline, the production stage, and then adding the user to this pipeline. Let's go back to the stages view and add a new stage. It will be also an empty job. And in this stage, we will deploy the content from development to test. So let's name it deploy to test. We'll choose the deploy content task. For the target stage here, we will use test backward. Let's go over the list available on the target stage and explain what does it mean. So the first option, test, it means you want to deploy content from development to test stage. Production is from test to production stage, and the ones with the backward notion means that the direction is reversed. So development backwards mean you are deploying content from test to development, and test backwards from production to test stage. So we will choose this one. We want to deploy all artifacts, so we choose all, and we will see the selective option later. And since we are deploying this for the first time in the pipeline, we need to provide a workspace name that will be created upon deployment. So let's name it same as pipeline name with the addition of test. And also we need to make sure that the allow deployment to create new artifacts in target stage is enabled. Otherwise, deployment will fail. Once the deployment is done, a new workspace will be created. And since we are doing these operations using the service principal, the user will not have access to this workspace. So let's add the user to the workspace as well. Let's grant him admin permissions. And this is our second stage. Our third stage will be pretty similar to the deploy to test, and it will be deploying from test to development. So we can go ahead and clone this stage. We can change its name to deploy to development and go do some minor modifications to the tasks. So here, instead of deploying from test to test from production, we will deploy from test to development. So we choose development backward. And we will change the new workspace name to be with development. And the rest of this task will stay the same. Same goes here. And now we have created the pipeline that will automate our scenario. Let's hit save. And now we can create a release that will show this process being automated. This is my workspace that I'm trying to onboard to pipeline. I will copy its name. And we can see that this workspace is not included in any pipeline. So it's create a pipeline. Now I will create a release to see this working. I create release. And now I will provide the values for my variables. So my workspace name is my foods analytics. The pipeline name will be and then we hit create. You can see that a new release has been created. So let's navigate to that. Now that the pipeline has completed running, let's go ahead and check the workspace on Power BI. So this is our workspace. We can see that the create have been changed to view in pipeline, which means my workspace is part of a pipeline now. Let's go ahead and check the pipeline. We can see it have the name that we have provided on our Azure pipeline. It contains our workspace, and it's in sync on all three stages, which means we have successfully deployed all the content through the stages. And now for our second demo, we want to automate the CI/CD process within Power BI over an Azure DevOps Git repository. In this demo, I will be using the YAML pipelines instead of the classic pipelines we just used in the first demo. But you can achieve the same on both versions of the pipelines. Here, I have an existing pipeline. It's a full pipeline that we can see it's in sync. This pipeline is backed by a Git repository. in Azure DevOps, which means all the files on development stage exist on a Git repository. So let's switch to that repository. We can see the files exist here, the PPIX files. And now we want to see how we can automate the CI/CD scenario for this repository to Power BI. I have prepared before here an Azure Pipeline YAML file that automates the scenario. Let's go over it and see what I have prepared. So for this pipeline to run, it needs two variables, the workspace name and the pipeline name connected to this repository. And then when a file is changed and committed to the repository, this pipeline will be run doing publish to Power BI and then deploying it to test and production. So the first stage here is publish the file to Power BI. This part. First step will be checking out the source code or the PPIX files. Then I will be downloading some secrets from Azure Key Vault containing my Service Principal ID, secret, and tenant ID. And then I have prepared a PowerShell script that calculates which file was changed using the Git commands and publish these files to Power BI using the PowerShell modules, which is this part. Once this is done, we can deploy the content from development to test. For that, I have a PowerShell script that I have prepared, which is a little bit similar to the first one. What it does, it's using Git commands, calculate what files have been changed, and collects a list of reports and datasets that need to be deployed. The output of this script is a variable that is created in the script, which named imported files, and that's how we know what we need to deploy on the next. So the next step here is to deploy the files. I have a condition that makes sure that the imported files output variable is not empty, so we don't have an empty task. And then I provided a very similar input as our in first demo, Service Principal, pipeline name. I'm deploying from development to test. And here you can see I have chosen selective deployment instead of deploy all and provided list of datasets and reports I wish to deploy. Then we have a validation. This is a manual validation step that asks the customer or the user to go ahead and validate that changes are okay and as expected on the test stage before deploying it to production. And then deploy to production is pretty similar to deploy to test. Now I have opened my CMD and I have locally cloned the repository containing this PPIX file, and I have changed one of the files, the product revenue. I have changed its theme from dark mode to default mode and changed one of the visuals types from pie chart to donut chart. Let's do git status. And now we can see that I have one modified file. Let's commit and push this file. So after I have pushed my changes, let's go back to Azure DevOps. Now we go to the pipelines. Now we can see that a new pipeline run has been created after I pushed my changes. Now that the deployment has been completed to test, I have to review the changes. So let's click Review. And see it instructs me to validate the changes on test stage. Let's switch to Power BI. Now let's take a look at the reports from test and production. We can see the compare has been updated. You can see that the reports are different. We open one from test. You can see it has the default theme and a donut chart on this part. And if we take a look at the production report, we can see it has the dark theme and a pie chart instead of the donut chart. After I'm happy with the changes, I can go back, click Review, and hit Resume so the changes are deployed to production. Now we can see that the changes were deployed to production. Let's go and check it out. So switching back to Power BI, let's open the production report. And now we can see that it's updated as well. In this session, we have learned what is deployment pipeline in Power BI, the Power BI extension for Azure DevOps, and how you can use it to easily integrate your Power BI deployment pipelines into Azure DevOps. You can find some additional resources here, and thank you for watching.